Olden times, when Ireland's glens and woods were still filled with fairies and leprechauns, giants too lived on that fair Emerald Isle. One of the finest of those big folk was Finn McCool, who was wed to the lovely great glass Una. They made their home at the top of Knockmani Hill. Now, as any good giant, Finn McCool had his work to do, so he was often away from home. Lovely Una didn't seem to mind, for there was plenty to keep her own hands busy, spinning, knitting, and even giving a pretty touch to the great house. Life was very pleasant indeed. One morning, when Finn McCool was busy, working with his kin, building a causeway to Scotland, the word came that Cuchulainn was coming. Cuchulainn was a giant too, and without a doubt the strongest in that part of the world. When he walked, the very earth trembled. With one blow of his fist, he had flattened a thunderbolt so that it looked like a pancake. He was so proud of that feat that he kept the thunderbolt in his pocket, just to show all how strong he was. Every giant in Ireland had been given a good beating by Cuchulainn. Every giant, that is, except Finn McCool. And Cuchulainn swore by the green that he would never rest, day or night, winter or summer, until Finn McCool was added to his list. So far, Finn had been smart enough. He had kept moving about whenever he heard that Cuchulainn was in the neighborhood. But this time, Cuchulainn was sure to get him. So Finn left the causeway and sped off for Knockmani Hill, his house and his darling Una. "Finn, my love," said Una, greeting him at the door, "what brings you home so early from your work?" "The chance to get a sight of you, my sweet thing," said Finn. Since he was as honest as the summer day is long, he added, "and to keep out of the way of Cuchulainn, he's after me." Una soothed her husband. She brought him his slippers and lit a pipe for him. She stirred up the peat fire so it would be cozy. Then she set down a huge mug of stout and cut a gigantic slab of soda bread for her dearie. "Finn, husband o' mine, enough is enough," said Una, as gently as she could. "For years you've been hiking around from one place to another to avoid this Cuchulainn. Why, you even built our house high on this windy hill so you'd be able to spy him coming. You'll not get a moment's rest until you stand fast and you face him." "Aye, I'll be getting plenty of rest if I stand fast and he knocks me down. I don't have the heart to face a man who can make a young earthquake just with his walk and who carries around a flattened thunderbolt in his pocket just to prove his strength." At Knockmani Hill gave a little dance. "He's coming," said Finn, his face turning a fine shade of pale green. "Now hush," said Una, "and give me time to think. Don't you worry, I won't do all I can to help you settle this matter once and for all." Una then worked a charm the fairies had taught her. She took 9 woolen threads, each of a different color, and braided them into 3 braids. She put 1 around her right arm, 1 encircling her heart, and the 3rd around her right ankle. Now, nothing she did could fail. Next, she sent around to all the neighbors to borrow 1 and 20 iron frying pans. She hid them in 1 and 20 loaves of bread that she baked on the fire in the usual way. She set them in the cupboard with some bread she had baked the day before. She then took a pot of milk and she made it into a fresh wet cheese and put it along with some white stones at the foot of the cradle that she had made up. "Now, my darling," she said, handing Finn some baby clothes, "put these on and do everything just as I'm about to tell you. And remember," she said at last, "Cuchulainn's strength lies in the brass finger he has on his right hand. Now quick into the cradle, because I hear that man mounting at the door." "All right, woman," he bellowed, the giant at the door. "Where's that Finn McCool coward I've been chasing after all this time? Well, well, said Una, with her sweetest smile. Now isn't that a shame? Finn was off working on the causeway when some important family affair called him away. But he'll be home by tea time, so why don't you just come right in and sit down? Poor Finn trembled in the cradle. See this, Cucullin said, pulling what looked like a pancake out of his pocket. This was a thunderbolt, and I cut it and flattened it. And that's what I'm going to do to Finn McCool too. Tish, tish, said Una. That may not be as easy as you think. Finn McCool's a big broth of a man. Why, take a look at her little baby, and you might be getting an idea of the strength and breadth of Finn himself. Cucullin peeked in the cradle. Cheer up, said the huge baby, looking back at him. My, said Cucullin, what a big boy. While you're waiting, why not have a bite to eat? Said Una. She put some fresh loaves of bread on the table, along with a can or two of butter and a pile of cabbages. Cucullin, who was much of a glutton as he was a bully, popped a loaf in his mouth and took a huge bite, right down on one of the frying pans. Clang! Yowl, said Cucullin. What kind of devil's bread is this? Here, 2 of my teeth are out. That's Finn's bread. He only kind of eats, said Una. It is a bit too tough for you. Too tough for me, shouted Cucullin. I should say not. Just give me another. Cucullin chomped into another loaf, and into another frying pan. I've not have a tooth left in me mouth, woman. There's 2 more out. Cucullin hollered even louder. The baby began to holler too. Hungry, hungry, hungry. Ah, sweet dumpling, said Una, and she handed a baby Finn a loaf. And because there was no frying pan in it, Finn ate it right down. More, said the baby, and he gobbled up another loaf. He seems a strong lad, said Cucullin, getting a little worried. If this was the baby, the father must indeed be a bit stronger, Cucullin thought. Ah, yes, said Una, beaming. Why, instead of dollies, he loves to play with those white stones there in his cradle. Show the nice man, baby dear. Finn did as he was told. He picked up a stone that was really the cheese and squeezed all the water out of it and popped it into his mouth and ate it down. Cucullin was not to be outdone by a baby. He grabbed a stone and squeezed. He squeezed and squeezed and squeezed as he might, he couldn't get 1 drop of water out of it. He popped it into his mouth, and with a chomp, there went the rest of his teeth. The howl that came out of him almost broke all of the windows. When he finally calmed down, Cucullin said to Una, What kind of teeth does that lad have? They must be made of iron. Let me see your choppers, baby. And at that, baby Finn opened his wide mouth, and Cucullin stuck in his brass finger, the very brass finger that was the secret to all of his strength. With a strong bite, Finn McCool bit the brass finger right off. Then up Finn leapt and began to pound the daylights out of poor weak Cucullin. And that was that. Out of the door went Cucullin, never to bother anyone, let alone Finn McCool again. Tea's ready, me love, said Una, and Finn McCool sat down with the best giant wife in the whole wide world, and they lived a long, happy life.